And also, think about this for a minute. If you make a journey across London where you use bus, tube, and then bus again, it sees all of that journey and it caps the price of it. If you do that here, you could get on a bus and pay what you just said you could pay. Then when you arrive at Metrolink, you're like a new customer again then. So you can rack up quite a big fee to get across our city region. And that then really isn't an incentive to leave the car at home, because you can be up towards 10, 12 quid by the time you've kind of made a big journey across one side of Greater Manchester to the other. So until we address that and get an integrated London-style Oyster, we are not going to make public transport the genuine alternative to the car that it needs to be. And I just agree with you, but I'm just trying to say tonight, it's not going to be quick or easy or cheap, I'm afraid, to turn this system around in the way that you're rightly calling for.
Gentleman over there.
You've actually answered past the question, because when I think he was elected, he was wanting to do an Oyster system in Greater Manchester, and I just wondered when that was going to happen. But also, with like Transport for Greater Manchester, and especially the Metrolink, whenever you go to the Piccadilly Metrolink station, it's completely dusty. I'm always having to take to Twitter to tell them to clean it, and yet you go to London and it's always nice and clean, but they don't seem to have any pride in the Metrolink stops in Greater Manchester.
Okay, we've got Steve here tonight who deals with Metrolink, Stephen. So maybe you could come back to that point. I always do that, the difficult ones I always like, give to the experts on the front row. I think largely, the Metrolink stops are much more pleasant environments than the train stations, I would say. But maybe that specific can be just picked up. On the first point, though, about when can we get that London-style system, we are taking steps towards it. So, not this Monday, but the one before, we introduce a zones 1 to 4 system on Metrolink. And the way to think of that, it's almost like the kind of foundation of a London-style system where you can then integrate other bits on top of that system. Now, I sent a tweet out this week sort of saying, isn't it great, zonal's giving everybody more for their money? And it is, but actually some people have seen, it came in at the time that there was a general fare increase, which was planned anyway, whether we did zonal or not, and that looked like zonal had raised people's fares, but it actually hadn't. But in some cases, people's fares were historically lower than in other parts of the city region, so some people are paying a little more. But overall, 4 out of 5 journeys now on Metrolink are cheaper through zonal than they would have been, and we think that's a real step forward. And obviously, you've got then unlimited travel within your zone again, which is giving people more for their money. I hesitate to say, it's May, we think we'll go contactless on Metrolink. So again, that's another step. So we're kind of slowly trying to get there, and from I think quite soon we're going to run a 6-minute service on the from Ashton as well. So there are improvements coming. The way I see it is, going back to the gentleman up there, I don't want to kind of sit before you all tonight and say, oh, it's all 3 to 5 years. We are trying to make things a little bit better all of the time, recognising though that our end destination is still some way away. The Piccadilly point, Stephen, would you mind picking that one up?
It's probably worth just adding as well that the Ashton enhanced service on Metrolink starts this coming Monday. So
it's really good. That's soon,
yeah. So yes, I think the cleanliness point is really important. It's a sign that it's a cared for system. So it's important just beyond cleanliness in itself. I think the most direct answer I can give is that we know this is a really important issue. We're working with Keolis Amy as our operator of the system, and in fact they've just literally changed over their main cleaning contractor for the system. So that's aimed then, through the contract we have with them, making a real difference, a step change. And I quite agree it's really important, not just in the city centre, but other stops as well.
We'll make sure that they've heard your questions
thank you for that,
by the way. And that's the purpose of these events. Indeed. Where people raise things in this forum, we do want the wider GM Public Services are represented here tonight, and we do want them to act on things that are said. I was at a previous Q&A in Tameside, and the whole issue of Droylsden and the kind of smell that people had there came up, and it kick-started a lot of work. That wasn't particularly quick, but eventually it helped us get a solution, and hopefully these Q&As, can help move issues forward for people.
So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we'll move on to the next topic now, which is one that you've spoken about quite a lot, homelessness. I've got 2 questions, we'll take them together. So David Jones and Gareth Dixon. If David goes first and then Gareth, wherever Gareth is.
Hi Andy.
Hi, David.
Right. It's well known that you do walkabouts in the centre of Manchester to see what's going on, in particular in relation to the homelessness problem. Do you do walkabouts in other areas like Bolton, Wigan, etc.?
Thanks, David.
And is Gareth here? No. Okay, so Gareth was, homelessness is talked about more than ever before, but nothing seems to change. If anything, the situation's getting worse. As Mayor for Manchester, what have you done so far, and what have you got planned for the future to resolve this? So if we do the sort of yes or no, have you been out and about outside of the city, first of all?
Okay, Hannah. Thanks, David. The answer is yes, but not everywhere yet. I've done one in Bolton recently. That was just before Christmas. I mainly do one around the city centre, so I do that every 3 months. But you're rightly challenging me to do more, and Brenda and I were just talking about this before this session began. You know, there's some brilliant work happening in this borough. Fantastic people. I was at Emmaus Mossley today. I mean, brilliant. Honestly, the way that whole place is supporting people, fantastic. And also, you know, here in Ashton, is it the Station Pub, Pauline Town? You know, I hear so many great things about Pauline wherever I go, not just in this borough, actually around Greater Manchester. You know, people like that people are pulling together in a way that is really quite humbling, really. And I think I do need to do more walkabouts, Dave, to answer your question. Lee, I do a walkabout because I live there and I still see what's going on there. Bolton I've done. But yeah, I'd be more than happy. Brenda and I were just talking about whether we would come and do one here, and that's something we'll set up, I think, in the near future.
Can I ask, do you do any at night time? The reason why I asked that is last week I was in Manchester. I went to Waterstones. There was a book signing event. Came back from Waterstones to get this train from Oxford Road Station. And you know there's a McDonald's 100 yards from your office. You know that one on the corner. And I went in there, and it was probably about 9 o'clock at night, and went to the gents, put it that way, and what I saw in there was two people, I use males, I use the word loosely, who were obviously alcoholics, drinking cans of lager, which I personally thought was completely not acceptable. And at that time I saw one or two other things as well, which you could say were a little bit anti-social, put it that way. So it might be an idea to go around at night time as well. You might see what's going on then.
What I tend to do is actually go around very early morning. I tend to go about 6 o'clock when I do my walkabout, because what I want to see is the true picture in terms of the levels of rough sleeping. And what you find is, if you go late at night, you get a mixture of people who maybe are out in the city centre, who maybe, I don't know, engage in the kind of behaviour that you said, but maybe not necessarily homeless. Whereas if you go early morning, you tend to see the real situation. So, you know, I understand what you're saying. I mean, to answer the question from Gareth, I think it was, yes. The figures are coming out next week on the levels of rough sleeping, and I'm confident that it will show a significant fall in levels of rough sleeping in Greater Manchester for the first time in a number of years, and that is down to the work that we're all trying to do together, that Paul Dennett is supporting us on as the portfolio lead on this issue. What have I done? Well, I wouldn't know where to start, to be honest, because we've done so much, actually. Genuinely, we have. And it's not all delivering all of the results yet that I would want it to. But we are the only city region in this country, this winter, that is aiming to provide a place for every person every night. And this borough, under Brenda's leadership, has been brilliant partners in the Bed Every Night scheme. Salford, absolutely brilliant. And to be honest, you know, we are really sort of beginning to turn the situation around. You know, we are funding a bed every night above and beyond. We're not getting any money off the government to do it, but we believe it's the right thing to do. 901 people have been through a bed every night since it launched at the beginning of November. 901. Last weekend, there were about 230 people in our provision across the 10 boroughs that would otherwise, or in other cities, would have been on the streets. But here they were inside. But here's the best bit about it, the bit that I am most proud of. Of those 901 people, 285 have moved from bed every night shelters to a fixed address. And it's quite simple, actually. If you look after people on an ongoing basis, i.e. cover their basic needs, rather than leaving them sort of bouncing around the streets, the minute they're settled and their needs are being met, I think they can then begin to think about how they might move forward in their life and back to a better position. And Bed Every Night is working and it's doing that. So I actually reject the premise of the question, I'm afraid. We are working so hard. You've got Tony Hunter here from the fire service. There's fire stations being used again this winter to help people. So they're doing their bit. We've got churches helping. We've got mosques helping. We've got businesses putting money in. We've got the captain of Manchester City Football Club putting his weight behind the campaign. A few City fans in tonight. There always are in Tameside, I always find. But, you know, I mean, it's something to celebrate, isn't it? We're not there yet, definitely not. And I don't want to sit here standing complacent. But my goodness, we are so much further on this year than we were last. And yet I stand by what I said in my manifesto. We can end the need for rough sleeping by 2020 if we all carry on working in this way. And what a message that sends out about Greater Manchester to the rest of the country and indeed the world, that here at least we're going to put a roof over every head. So yeah, it's work in progress, but there is progress. And it's not getting worse, actually. It's beginning to get a little bit better.
The numbers do look good in terms of what might be coming out next week, and in terms of, you know, what people see on the streets. I think people would probably generally agree with that. There was the centre that was the flagship Bed Every Night centre that then has been closed. Is it a case that there's always going to be ups and downs through this?
I mean, it's funny because I saw the kind of report in, well, let's name them, the Manchester Evening News. And it made it look like I'd fitted the electrics myself, you know, that I've been in there over, you know, like dodgy sort of work on the light fittings. I mean, the truth of the matter is, we've got to be resourceful. So when we find empty buildings, and often people come to us, oh, there's an empty building, you know, you've got to make sure they're safe. And the point is, buildings are often empty for a reason, because they might have problems with structural problems or problems with the utilities. So you always have to have a bit of a, can we do this one, does it work, is it going to be safe enough? And sometimes, you know, because of the nature of the buildings that you're trying to use, because they are a bit, you know, maybe a bit on the edge, some of them won't work. And I just was really surprised that they almost, I don't know, I felt anyway, when I read some of that coverage, it was like just trying to undermine everyone's confidence in everything that we were doing, because one shelter had a problem with its electrics. So what? I was as gutted as anybody that we had a problem with the electrics at that shelter. Really, I was, you know, but it was one, and we had so many open across Greater Manchester, and I just felt, it disappointed me because I felt there were so many people donating to the Mayor's Homelessness Fund who were behind the campaign, and they must have thought, oh, it's all being wasted, you know, and that just really, anyway, I just got a bit frustrated by that. There's a lot of people who want to kind of say that everything we're doing is all for PR or it's not doing it, but I can prove that's not the case. The figures speak for themselves. So, you know, I just want these, you know, not everything will be easy, because it never is in something as complex as homelessness. How can it be? But really, we are making progress. There are setbacks along the way, hence the Midland Street shelter. But I'm pretty confident in saying Manchester City Council have now opened, or about to open, a replacement for it. So, you know, the problem's been dealt with.
Does anyone have any questions? Yes, up here.
Thank you. I was going to ask
we've got. Do you want? There's a lady behind you, and then we'll come to you next. Sorry. Thank you.
Hi. We've already made the comparison to London in terms of transport, and I just wondered, I'm sure you are aware of what Croydon did in an attempt to address their homelessness issue, and it was to encourage fair B&B, where it encouraged residents of Croydon that had perhaps a spare room with careful vetting to actually give up their room for the night. So it's not just about, you know, the rough sleepers that are alcohol, you know, with many complex issue, but the homelessness where it's disguised, where you've got families, young families dependent on B&Bs and the cost that incurs, and instead encouraging those that maybe need that extra income to work with local authorities and to get those people in a, you know, just as you said, meet their basic needs and help them to move on into sustainable housing.
Oh, it's a really good point. And we're always keen to learn from other places that are doing things differently. You know, we have got a lot of good things happening here, but there's always things we can learn from elsewhere. And Croydon have been here to talk to us actually about what's happening. We have something like what you're saying. So we have an organisation called DePaul who are working in Greater Manchester. They kind of came here last year, and they're providing something called, I think it's called Night Stop. And that is a service particularly for young people. So people who are prepared to offer a room for a young person who's homeless or at risk of being homeless. Now, as you say, it needs to be carefully done and vetted, etc. But it's a great scheme, and I think we've given a bit of funding to help try and develop that particular service. And just overall, when you're saying about the cost, I just want people to have the figures on Bed Every Night because I think they're revealing. So we've worked out now that pretty much the basic cost that it is to put somebody in a bed for a night is £32. If you're going to provide some other support around that individual, £32. Now, think about this. Crisis, the charity, estimate that the cost of every rough sleeper is £20,000 plus per year because of the entrenched health problems they get, A&E, police station, all of the kind of call-on expensive public services that they may need to make. If you take that figure of £32 and times it by the days in the year, it will cost £11,000 to keep somebody in bed every night for a year. So you've got £11,000 doing that. £20,000 if you leave people sleeping rough. But actually, the figures from Bed Every Night show that people don't stay a year. They're moving through much quicker than that. So it's got to make sense, hasn't it, to fund this stuff every single night. Because I want to lead a Greater Manchester that captures people as soon as they fall. It doesn't allow them to kind of get lost on the streets. That isn't the kind of place that any of us believe in. And I am on a complete mission with it, and I won't stop until we've properly turned things around.
Gentleman there, I think you've got the microphone, yeah.
Hi. I was going to, I was down for a question, I think, but the gentleman asked it about beds for the night. I represent Sandwich Angels, and Councillor Borden, we work for them. We do about 3,500 sandwiches a week, and we deliver to Pauline Town, amongst others. And I'm really pleased with the work for Beds for the Night. It's made a lot of people safe, and the sandwiches that we were putting out at night were at risk at sometimes of delivering them, and it's made it a lot simpler to do it.
Yeah.
And to say it's going to end in March, I'm not sure whether that's good enough, whether we should extend it, but it's much appreciated by people involved in making sandwiches. And we do it without cash. It's all done by goods being delivered, sandwiches, the contents of the sandwiches. If somebody gives us cash, then we change it into vouchers with Morrison's. We don't handle cash. It's all done by donations of food. Thank you.
Well, it's brilliant what you're all doing. And Peter, it's what I was saying before. I'm quite humbled at times to sort of find out how much people are doing. There are hundreds of volunteers across all of our 10 boroughs who are doing the kind of thing that you're doing, working with people like Pauline. It's really quite humbling, and it makes I don't know. It sounds quite corny, but it makes me very, very proud to be mayor of this place. Because if you put out the call, which I did, people are answering it, aren't they? People are doing it. People were doing it before, but I think what we've done is we've gone up to a higher level, I think, in terms of the way in which we're getting organised now. And we've got, as you say, a structure, which is a bed every night. And because what I've noticed is, you've got a lot of people going to the city centre and they're handing out food or other things. People often argue that that helps to a degree, but you could also argue it doesn't actually help move people away from the street. And the thing about Bed Every Night is it means those charities can go into those places and add more value to what's being done for people, because they're giving their service in a secure, warm environment, and it's more likely to have more impact for people. So, yeah, it's really working. You get to the issue about the end of March, and I've got the Chief Executive of Tameside Council looking at me here saying, what's he going to promise of my budget now? And, I'm good at spending other people's budgets. So I'd like to continue it. I can't sit here tonight and say we definitely can, because we don't necessarily have all of the money in place to do that. But I've put colleagues from the NHS and perhaps the police and other services on notice. how can it make sense if it costs us £20,000 to have somebody sleep in rough? How can that make sense not to invest in enough places in every borough to mean that people don't fall through the net and end up in the doorways? Because the truth of the matter is, one night out on the street, just one night, is enough to, I would say, very seriously damage your physical health and your mental health. Just one night out. And if that is the case, then we shouldn't let it happen.
I appreciate that. Brenda's been to visit already. He's due to come again. And if you'd like to come along and see the work we do, I'll be in touch.
Great. I think we'll get this walkabout set up quite soon with me and Brenda, and we'd love to come and thank everybody who's doing everything that they're doing.
Hello, Andy. Hi. Down here, hi. in between John and, I don't know, sorry, this is Stephen. Dr. Nicola Jeffrey Sykes. I'm following on from what you're saying, and yes, it is so encouraging about your call for action, how many people have rallied around it. It really is. I myself am very much involved in taking things down to Boo Street Drop-In Centre as a result of collecting round our various churches around Saddleworth, now currently 12, and taking things down there on a regular basis, and also to Oldham Angels, which is another food bank, etc. Yeah. One thing I'd like to bring to your attention from the research that I've done is no one has approached the supermarkets for their older produce, and I'm talking Aldi, Lidl and Morrison's, for their older produce, to say that it has fallen out of date but it is still fresh now. Co-op have saying they would like to volunteer as well, to say they would like to do this drop-off of food to save us, just keep going down, etc. They could do it much larger volumes than I can do, shipping down stuff to just 2 venues, which I do on a weekly basis. And they also, because it's not just food, particularly Boo Street, are saying, the ladies say to me, can I have stuff for chapped lips? Can I have sanitary pads? Can I have clean nicks? The gentlemen are saying to me, can we have underwear? Can we have a vest? Can we have some older blankets? And Lidl are saying to me, all our 30% stuff that's finished with, we just bin, and we would love to donate this, and yet no one's approached them. So there is a link here that's saying, you know, instead of it going into landfill, for goodness sake, let it go to these food banks. Let it go to these places that can utilise them.
Oh, you've put it really well.
Thank you.
No, you really have. And I think you're right. We have some supermarkets that are working on a localised basis with local groups, and some of that does happen, to be fair to them. And I think there's organisations like FareShare who do collect stuff at a sort of more central level. However, I think we should sit around the table with all the main supermarkets and talk to them more seriously about providing not just food, but that wider set of stuff that people need on a more structured basis to support all of our Bed Every Night shelters. Because I think then you're really starting to look after all of people's needs rather than just the food requirements. So, absolutely. I think we've got to keep... I think, you know, picking up on the colleagues' points about Croydon and other things that people have said, we've just got to keep building this all the time and making it better, stronger, adding more value all the time. And that's what I want to do working with you on.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Right, we'll move on to the next question. Do we have Charlotte Martin? Charlotte is up there.
I'm running for May's local elections. I live in Orningshaw. It's where I'm standing as a Labour candidate. My question for you is regarding spikes in crime and antisocial behaviour in Tameside. So just last week I attended a community clean-up and arranged for a bin removal for a local business, so their bin had been set alight as an example. I'm aware these types of incidents don't happen in isolation. We've lost over 2,000 police officers in Greater Manchester. So in your role as Police and Crime Commissioner, what are your thoughts on tackling this issue, which has come up as a top priority for the residents that I've spoke to?
Well, thank you very much. It's clear to me you're already speaking up for even though you're not elected yet, hopefully you will be, you're already speaking up for your residents, so that's great. I'm really pleased that the Chief Constable is with us this evening, so I'm sure Ian Hopkins might want to say something to add to what I'm about to say. I kind of really struggle, to be honest, with the way in which policing has been allowed to lose resources over the last 10 years. You know, there's some bits of public spending you could argue are, you know, sort of questionable or non-essential, but I'm afraid you cannot say that about our police service. And, you know, we are both connected with a party that did invest in policing over our time in government. I won't say we got everything right, but we did invest in the police, and we had a really clear line on antisocial behaviour, and we kind of said, no, you do have to tackle those bin fires and the low level stuff if you're not to let people have a general sense that their neighbourhood is in decline. But the reality is we have lost all those police officers since 2010, and I think we've hit it some time ago, but to keep on going down as they're going, basically they're making us raise the money through council tax. That's what they're doing. They are not increasing our central government grant. And the issue about that is, for someone like Greater Manchester, is the vast majority of our policing budget is made up of central grant. So about 3/4, Ian, isn't it?
80%.
80% comes from central government grant. So if that doesn't increase, you know, we're struggling because we've only got our bit of council tax. It struggles to raise the money, if you like. If you live in the leafy shires, you're more like 50% or more comes from council tax, so your council tax raises a lot more, whereas here ours doesn't. So that's why we're so kind of angry about it, really. The government are kind of claiming that they're cutting everyone's taxes at a national level. Because the truth is, they're making us do the dirty work. We have to raise the money for essential services like policing. And you just need to know that. I mean, I'm sorry if that sounds like a party political point, but I just believe that is the reality of what's being asked here. But I'm going to confirm this tonight because it's gone public today. I've put a proposal under the freedoms that they gave us to raise council tax for policing to ask the Greater Manchester public to pay the full amount, £24, for a band. It's band D, so it's a bit less. It's more like 20 for a band B property, which, you know, is a difficult decision. But I have to make that as the Police and Crime Commissioner. Because my judgment is, yeah, better buses, people are calling for better buses, but they're definitely calling for more police as well. And people can feel it now. You know, the police are very stretched in terms of what they can do. And we made a start last year, didn't we, in where we started to recruit more police officers for the first time in 8 years. But my proposal is to the Police and Crime Panel, and obviously to the other leaders of Greater Manchester, is that we are, and we should probably raise the full amount, because that could allow us to put 300 or so police officers back on the street. You know, for every borough, that is a significant number. So, Ian, would you want to pick up on anything else there?
You've said it all very eloquently, Andy. And I'm not a politician and I'm not allowed to agree with him, but honestly, it's really, really difficult. And so what's been happening is we've been focusing on the top end at the serious crime, and Greater Manchester Police is still rated as outstanding for that. And then we're having to concentrate on the most vulnerable and the most at risk at the bottom end, and in the middle, everybody's been really, really feeling it. So that's why we don't go to sheds that get broken into, and car crime has been going up. You know, people have started breaking into cars on streets again, and the public are just not getting the service that we would want to give, but that they feel that they quite rightly deserve as well. So, you know, we will always work where there's a pattern, and in Tameside we had a significant pattern of antisocial behaviour from the summer onwards, and it sort of peaked around about October with Halloween and then bonfire night. We've done a lot of work with the local authority, and Steve Pleasant's nodding his head there. There's still a lot of work going on. The antisocial behaviour has come down. There is a particular problem in this borough with fireworks. And when I do my regular slot with Mike Sweeney, I actually said, you know, something has to change about the sale of fireworks. It should not be acceptable that people can go into Aldi or Morrison's or wherever and buy fireworks. And I wrote to every single MP across Greater Manchester just before the debate in Parliament. 4 responded, 3 of them were from Tameside, all very positive about it, but nothing's changed. So, you know, we cannot possibly enforce every incident of antisocial behaviour. I think certainly around fireworks there needs to be a legislative change that you can't just rock up in a supermarket and buy fireworks. They should be through licensed events, and Tony from the fire service may well agree with that position as well.
It's worth just adding very quickly, actually, on the antisocial behaviour point and potentially young people who might get involved in it. I am determined to bring through the opportunity pass for 16 to 18-year-olds, which obviously will support them with travel. But I want it to be a contract with young people. So if they are caught engaged in antisocial behaviour, let's say 2 or 3 times, they should lose it. You know, it shouldn't be the case that, you know, we just say that's okay. You know, we need to be clear, we're going to help you get on in life, but that means we expect certain things as well. And I think that's a kind of fair way to think about it, really. You know, kind of help young people, but also be clear that we won't just accept people then causing antisocial behaviour on Metrolink or on our buses or setting fire to bins or whatever it might be. So I think there are things we can do with some of the policies we've got coming through to have a better discussion with young people about what we're going to help them with, but what we expect from them in return.
Any more questions on policing?
Yeah, it's not really a question as such, but I remember coming to this college a few years ago and they did a huge spree on trying to recruit special constables. Now, I filled out one of those application packs and I've not heard anything back from Greater Manchester Police. And I was just wondering basically like maybe it might be worth doing that again with young people, because then it gets young people noticing how short our emergency services are of staff and also gets the right resources for the community.
Well, I certainly strongly support the specials that we've got and the people who put themselves forward for those roles. And actually, given that we are recruiting again, obviously it can be a stepping stone towards becoming a full warranted police officer. So I think we probably both, Ian and I both support that. But Ian, would you like to?
Yeah, it's gone off. Ah, there we go. Oh, sorry, nobody got in touch. I don't know why. So we have a recruitment figure of 500 for special constables, because clearly there is a process where you have to get them in and we have to train them and equip them, and all of that comes with money. The recruitment that we've been doing for regular officers over the last 2 years has been 500 a year to stand still, 550 last year because of the increase that Andy's already talked about. And then we're also having to recruit call handlers and police community support officers and people that work in custody as detention officers. So our total recruitment last year was 1,500 people. And it's a really big ask on the organisation that for the last 9 years has just been cutting all of the support that would be there to recruit. So the specials are a vital part of policing and we get absolutely fantastic service from them, but we've been struggling to maintain those numbers at 500, and certainly with what we're going to have to do in the 1920 financial year, I don't see us recruiting very many specials. I see more of them converting into being regular officers. But that said, you know, if you're still interested, we would welcome people coming to join us, because I do need people that want to do it for the long term, not just want to do it for a year and then become a regular officer, because I have to get a return on the investment that we're putting in.
We'll move on to the next question from Craig G, or Craig G, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your surname. Craig G here. Oh, he's over there. And you can tell me how to... Okay, Craig would like to know your ideas for regeneration, and I think it's probably quite a good time to bring in, we've had a question as well on Twitter and it's about the spatial framework. Is Andy aware, so your idea has been regeneration, and then is Andy aware that with the spatial framework plans for Bamford, Rochdale, that 450 houses are planned that will increase traffic on an already busy road by 75%. What are your plans for public transport improvements to handle this?
Well, that's a good question, and yeah, everyone will be aware, you know, of the challenging debate we've had around the spatial framework. And I made a commitment that we would undertake a radical rewrite of it. That was done, and we presented it on the 7th of January. Overall, the green belt take has been reduced by over 50%. And, you know, maybe Paul wants to come in on this item because he oversaw this process, working with my team at the GMCA. You know, we have massively listened to what the public were saying. I personally would have liked to have gone a bit further, actually, if I'm honest. But the government came in and said, no, you've got to use a methodology that's based on figures from 2014, and that actually keeps the figure quite high. So in many ways, myself and the leaders, our hands were a bit tied, because if we'd have ignored what the government was saying, our plan could have been struck down. And the problem we've got, of course, is if we don't have a spatial framework, the green belt is at more risk of being taken if developers can pick it off without there being a strong plan in place. So we've come forward with a revised plan. In this borough, the green belt take, Brenda has led this, and Stephen, Chief Executive, has come down pretty significantly. The figure I have is around 82% reduction. That's pretty significant. And we did listen to many of the people in this borough that were raising concerns. But even so, we're still listening. You know, there's a new consultation now that's begun on the revised draft. And I have said, actually, publicly, to answer the question from the colleague who's contacted us from Rochdale, from Bamford, I think we should be making sure that development is linked to public transport. The big problem with the first draft, well, there were a number of problems with it, to be honest, but one of the problems with it was that it seemed that we were following some outdated thinking about building for the car. You know, building by big roads on green sites that basically left people with little alternative but to get in their car. That, in my view, wasn't a good enough vision for the future of Greater Manchester. And that's why, with Paul and other colleagues, we made a switch back to brownfield. And that is very much at the heart of the revised spatial framework, but also town centres. We think we can build far more of the homes we need in our town centres. They're not going to be the retail destinations that they once were. We keep hearing, don't we, in the news about the decline of the high street. Well, if that's the case, let's build there and bring new communities into our town centres and breathe new life into them. And I'm really pleased that Stalybridge is the nominated town under our town centre challenge. I'd love to see the development now really starting to come through as part of that. So I take the point. I actually believe that, you know, we should have public and transport infrastructure to support new development. That is a really fair point and a point well made. And as Mayor, I'm going to make sure that when we get to our final plan, that the public transport offer that we've got really supports where there is development and where that will put pressure on the transport system. So it's been a difficult process. It remains one in many ways. But actually, I think our team have done a really good job. We have listened, and it's a stronger plan as a result.
Thank you. Did you want to comment?
Yeah. So obviously the relaunch of the spatial framework incorporates an awful lot, really. So as Andy's highlighted, there's a commitment here to do town centre regeneration. Brownfield first is very much a priority for Greater Manchester, but there's an awful lot else in that. There's, you know, a presumption in planning terms against fracking within Greater Manchester. There's also a carbon neutrality target for Greater Manchester of 2038. New homes being built through the planning system. We want to be net zero carbon by 2038. I think the point on infrastructure is a really important one. And we know certainly in the north and here in Greater Manchester, when it comes to public capital and investment in infrastructure, the north isn't terribly well served when Westminster is handing out money. So we have to get better at making sure we get the necessary investment in our infrastructure here in Greater Manchester. And one of the ways of doing that is by having a plan. And in a sense, what we've got now is a 20-year vision for Greater Manchester, and it seems to have gone down well with government, actually. It's the feedback I'm getting from Andy and the conversations I'm having. But it's also a lobbying tool to say to government, look, this is our plan for the future. Now it's down to you, government, to work with us. Now, government have worked with us to date on things like marginal viability allocations. We're going through forward funding allocations. This is all for infrastructure within Greater Manchester. But I think it's absolutely right. The question is, well, where is that coming from in the future? Because the planning system in and of itself will not deliver the infrastructure investment we need within Greater Manchester. So having a plan ensures that we have the best possible chance of getting as much money as we can out of the Treasury when it comes to infrastructure investment. So I think we're in a good place, but the proof of the pudding is in delivery.
Everything Paul has just said is absolutely right. And the Secretary of State for Transport is visiting us very shortly, and I think that suggests that the government are listening and have heard some of what we've said about the need for transport investment. So, yeah, we live in hope.
Does anyone have any more questions around infrastructure, spatial framework, housing? The lady over there.
Thank you. I'm interested to know how many of these new houses are going to be affordable housing. We've got this huge problem of young people and people on the streets, and basically it's an unfair market. So I just want to know how many of these can we guarantee will be affordable housing?
Yeah. Again, I'm going to bring Paul in because he's done a lot of the work on this. We've come up, the first Greater Manchester Spatial Framework was a plan to build more homes. But as I've repeatedly pointed out, that doesn't mean you solve the housing crisis if those homes have got double garages and they're on the big roads and all the rest of it. And Paul has developed a new housing vision for Greater Manchester alongside the spatial framework, and it's only right to let Paul talk to you about it.
Sure. So on affordable housing within the spatial framework, there is a target over the period of the plan to deliver 50,000 affordable homes. 30,000 of those will actually be social homes within Greater Manchester. However, the question is that ambitious enough? Because, I am cognizant of the cross-party commission that was undertaken, facilitated by Shelter recently, that said, over the next 20 years, I think it's England needs 3.1 million social homes. So we've got a huge target on our hands here as a nation, and the government acknowledges that the housing market is broken. I don't think the planning system in and of itself is going to deliver truly affordable housing at the level we need it within Greater Manchester. So again, this is going to come down to, well, how do government respond to that cross-party commission and that target of truly affordable housing in social housing? The other issue we've got as well is we're losing considerable stock as a consequence of right to buy. Since 1980, we've lost over 92,000 homes within Greater Manchester. We have approximately 85,000 people on our housing waiting list. So it's quite clear to me, in terms of the housing market, when homelessness was rendered statistically insignificant in this country, it was when councils up and down the country were building council houses. And we need a government to get back to building truly affordable housing, be they council housing or social homes. That's the real challenge here. But we do have a target of 50,000 in the spatial framework.
Can I just, I think Paul has really put us in a really strong position. We've got a really strong housing policy now that's taking shape alongside this revised spatial framework. But I want to just say something else, if I may, because I don't think we solve this issue by thinking only about building new homes. I think we've got to get more focus on the existing housing stock, and particularly the private rented sector. I'm going to keep going on about this until we get some real change, because many of those homes that Paul just described that have left the council housing stock or social housing stock ended up in the private rented sector. And what happens is we have landlords that bought them up, they don't live here, they don't really care about Greater Manchester, they don't really invest anything in those properties, they don't care for the safety of the people who live inside, or indeed the communities around those properties, but they just care about carrying on raking in the universal credit or the housing benefit. And they're just not welcome here, those people. I don't want them here. I want to see the back of people who think that that is acceptable behaviour. So I'm really focused on bringing through what I call a GM good landlord scheme. There are good landlords, and if they're doing the right thing by their tenants and the communities where they own properties, fine, they'll be okay to sign up to a GM good landlord scheme. But what that will do is identify those who won't sign up to that. And then I want to see if the fire service, HMRC, council's health and safety environment, get after them, because it's wrong that we reckon 30 to 40% of properties in the private rented sector are not maintained to the decent home standard, but yet they rake in thousands through public money in respect of people living in those properties. That just can't be allowed to carry on in my view. So get after the private rented sector, and if they won't comply, then buy them out and try and turn their properties back over to social rented stock. I think that you could probably make more of an impact more quickly going after those landlords that don't do the right thing, because those homes are there. We could get our hands on them more quickly, and not just thinking about necessarily always building more homes to solve the housing crisis. But Paul, I just want to pay tribute to him, because he's really turned things around from where we were a couple of years ago, where we had a spatial framework without a housing policy or vision, I think, and the public rightly said, hang on a minute, what's this going to solve for us? And I think we've come back with a much stronger set of proposals for you.
Thank you. The lady over there.
I just wanted to ask about empty homes. So as you walk around streets, you often see a lot of empty homes. What are we doing about those properties? Because obviously they could be brought back into use quite quickly. And I'm sure there are blight on the neighbourhoods that, you know, they're sitting in. So what can we do about that? Is there any plans for empty homes?
Yeah. I'm going to defer to my expert again. Paul, do you want to come and sit up here? And I'll,
yeah, there is a plan for empty homes, and what we're actually doing is we're using the housing investment fund, and we're using the surpluses on that and the charges we make at a Greater Manchester level on that to tackle, as Andy's already highlighted, rogue landlords, absolutely, but also to bring empty homes back into use. And we think approximately we'll have about £12 million over the next 4 years to actually commit to doing some of this work around rogue landlords and bringing empty homes back online really within Greater Manchester. I have to say though, at the moment there isn't a national scheme to bring empty homes back into use, whereas historically there was. So I think there's a bit of lobbying of government to be done here to say, look, can we have another empty home scheme again to help us with doing some of this? Because, you know, local authorities are definitely struggling from a resourcing point of view. I know my local authority, we're taking out of our budget nearly another £16 million in this next financial year. So, you know, putting the pressure on government and using the housing vision, the strategy that's going to be forthcoming, and the GMSF is a real opportunity for us. But yeah, it is on our radar and we are going to do stuff, but I'd like to scale that up because £12 million over 4 years won't go very far really, I don't think.
I just want to say one thing just to add something to what Paul just said, so everyone understands this. You know, when Greater Manchester did the deal with George Osborne for devolution, we got a Greater Manchester Housing Fund, £300 million roughly. And much of that was let to build some of the big buildings you can see now in the city centre. Not all of it, some of it went to other boroughs, but the majority of it went to those, you know, those quite high-end developments. People were saying, well, why have you done that? And it's partly because of the way the fund was constructed. But finally, people are seeing it come full circle, because as Paul said, those loans are now being repaid, and we are capturing the surplus from those loans, and that creates that 12 million that Paul was talking about. And that money now is being recycled to empty properties in the outlying boroughs or private rented issues and housing renewal outside of the city centre. And I hope people kind of see through that example how it makes sense to work as one Greater Manchester, that the strength of the city centre is actually all of our strength and we can all tap into it. And I think the Greater Manchester Housing Fund, the way we've kind of developed it, kind of really shows that if you kind of the strong city centre now has been recycled into improving housing more broadly, and that's a policy we want to continue to develop.
I think there's someone up there with a comment. Yeah.
Good evening, Andy. Very welcome news to hear that you're still supporting brownfield in advance of greenbelt sites. What seems to be happening now, I should say, I live in the Hyde area, and the full housing allocation, the spatial framework allocation, has been dropped into our area on 2 sites, which are Godley Green Village and the Apethorn and Bowlacre sites. Now, I know you're aware of a site in the centre of Hyde that Jonathan Reynolds has championed, which is the ABC Waxworks, 5.5 acre site, capable of yielding 150 houses. It's not been included on the brownfield register. I've been told by a member of the planning team, which I won't embarrass him by saying his name, who's told me this, who said it's impossible to move that forward because of the contamination of the site, and no money is available for that. Now, this site is surrounded by other housing developments. It's in a prime location, centre of Hyde, with the full infrastructure of motorway, all the amenities that are required. And yet, in another document, this site is listed as not being a brownfield, but a mixture of brown and green, and not even contaminated. The numbers that stack up on this, within the own paperwork of the spatial framework, there is a table 7.4 that states that the total requirement for Tameside is 9,500 houses or thereabouts. Everything has been sorted up until the last 1,500 homes for the framework. However, the 2 sites that I've talked to you about are due to yield 2,700 homes. Something is wrong with the figures. There is something fundamentally wrong with the figures. 2 years ago, at a meeting of that was organised by the Tameside Planning Department, a document was produced that I've got a copy of that stated when the target was of 13,600 homes in Tameside, the allocation that was the shortfall, they already had 11,000 homes accounted for, and the balance was to be drawn from the Greenbelt. We're now in a situation where we're all looking for a total of 9,500. What has happened to the numbers?
Okay, well, no, I think you've asked a number of fair questions there, and I think Stephen or Brenda would probably want to come in and give you more of a Tameside, because I don't know all of the detail on the sites that you mentioned. What I would say is, I mean, we'll take on board the points that you've raised as part of the consultation. I don't know the full answer to that. There is an issue with contamination. I don't know what the position is there, but I think there is, a question of cost. That if it costs too much, therefore it's not a viable site, therefore you can't put it forward. But I mean, I'd have to be advised by those who would know a bit more about it. But I think you've made your point pretty well, and I don't know whether the Chief Executive of Tameside wanted to pick up some of the detail there.
I think particularly on the ABC Waxworks site, I mean, that is a site that actually is included within the housing land supply, and we would absolutely love that site to come forward. It's a classic brownfield site. If you went back 15 years or so, that's the sort of site that will be subject to derelict land grant, because by the nature of the title of it, it has got significant contamination on it, but it's an ideal housing site, part of the housing supply, but we absolutely know it's very, very difficult to bring it forward because of the economics of the site. But it is part of our housing supply, and it is in there. But as it stands at the moment, unless we actually find some significant amount of public subsidy into that, we wouldn't be able to bring that site forward. But we have identified it as a potential housing site. And just on the general broader point, and you made that point earlier in terms of the way that we've looked at the bringing forward the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework, we've looked long and hard at Greenbelt release in terms of the housing numbers, and like you said, we've actually reduced the number of Greenbelt sites down by 82%, and the criteria for doing that has been a focus on making sure that the sites that are coming forward are those that are the best, most sustainable in terms of things like public transport.
I think the point's been captured though, and I would just agree with Stephen. I mean, that site sounds ideal. The question for us would be, can we justify the large amount of public money that will be needed? Is it proportionate?
Can I send you some detailed figures that I've got on this matter?
You can, of course.
Direct to you, Andy.
Yeah, of course.
I would like you to see it.
Yeah.
I feel, and a lot of my local residents, that we're being asked to carry the majority of the housing burden within Greenbelt for the whole of Tameside. And the infrastructure, particularly the A560 corridor, is at breaking point. A development at Redbury, on the Redbury curve, did a traffic survey. They built 60 houses there. That survey, that surveyed an area between George Lane and Bents Lane, concluded that it was totally gridlocked at both ends of the rush hour day. The average speed was 2 miles per hour. Now, if we're talking about putting 2,700 extra houses onto the 560, irrespective of what the road junctions will do, the finite capacity of the A560 has been exceeded already.
Well, I mean, I agree with what you're saying around transport. That's why I said earlier that we have to have more strategic transport investment if we're going to have considerable development. Development should go ahead when we've got the transport capacity to ensure that it's not all going straight onto the roads, and I would absolutely agree with that. I think the point's been taken on board. I mean, I'm not in a position tonight to be able to answer it in detail, but it's why we're consulting again. We think this plan is a lot better, but we're not saying it's perfect, and we are prepared to continue a conversation. But I think Tameside have definitely done a radical rewrite. Now I know it's not going to please everybody, and that's difficult. When I say that, it's difficult if you're saying, well, not for us, it doesn't look that way from where we're sitting. And that's the trouble with planning, isn't it? It depends on where you sit, isn't it, in terms of how you feel about it. But, you've made fair points tonight, and I think, we'll take them on board, but I can't promise you that, we'll necessarily come up with the answer you want, but we will certainly listen and keep talking.
Thank you. Very much. I think we'll move on. This is bound to be a topic that keeps coming up time and time, unless anyone's got anything that they desperately feel they need to respond to. But otherwise, I think...
The gentleman's talking about my walk, and I know the site very well, and it's estimated it'll cost £10 million to decontaminate. That's a lot of money to get a return on.
I think that is the issue. We've got to get to the bottom of it. Peter's right, he knows his work far better than I know it. That would probably place it beyond the viability range, in that we have a land fund with the government. We hope to agree around 50 million. So, to use a fifth of it on one site would be a difficult thing for us to contemplate. But let's look at, let's see if there's further information that can shed light on that. But I think, as you've heard from the Chief Executive, it is a site that the Council would like to bring forward if they could afford to do it.
Great, thank you. Do we have Annette McCone? Annette.
Okay, my question is about young people. So first of all, I think it is great about the bus pass for 16 to 18-year-olds. But going beyond that, what's your strategy for improving the lives of young people who've been impacted by 10 years of austerity?
Yeah, I mean, when I stood for election, people may remember, I said I would make young people the priority for investment. I've been in Westminster for 16 years, and I'd seen, well, particularly in recent times, young people made the target for cuts. Honestly, I don't see how you can build a strong society on that basis. You have to give them more help. And there's a reason why children's mental health keeps rising up the agenda. It's because, the pressures on them are enormous. It's harder for them to make their way, and yet we don't give them enough support. So, some people may say, oh, why are we paying for a bus pass? Well, I've explained it earlier that it's in everyone's interest, because we need to get people on buses if we're going to make the buses work for everyone. But actually it is about saying, and I am saying unashamedly, this is the right thing to do. Because I've done a survey of all of our boroughs and all of our young people, because I wanted to find out what they think. And too many of them replied to that survey when asked the question, do you have hope for the future? No. And these are 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds. I mean, we've got to do more by them, I think. Much more, honestly. And what else am I doing? Well, I can't solve everything, and I don't have, the budget isn't necessarily there. But the vision I've kind of been outlining for a while now is something much better for young people who are not on the university route, because I don't think they get the attention that they need and deserve. And I've argued for a UCAS-style system for apprenticeships in Greater Manchester. One place where young people, a young person here in Tameside could see everything that's out there in the city centre, in Salford, Media City, and everywhere, and apply for those things in the same way that university students get to apply for it. But the crucial thing is the bus pass means they know they can get there. And that is what this is all about, as far as I'm concerned. Building towards a much better system that helps them find their way in the world. And, I bet people from this borough will look at the city centre and see those big buildings rising up into the sky. And I want them to think, yeah, I could work there one day. I don't want to lead a Greater Manchester where that looks like intimidating, and well, that's not for me. But the kind of place I want to kind of build is a place where young people have belief that they could go and work in those places, and they know that they could fund their journey to that place. So, I feel really passionately about this, and some people may not agree with what I'm saying, but I said I would make them my priority for investment, and I'm not going to do what other politicians have done and pull the rug on them and say, oh, well, forget about that now. Well, no, I believe everything I want to achieve for Greater Manchester rests upon giving the next generation more help, more support, hope for the future. If we don't give them that, then I'm afraid all the issues we're talking about tonight will carry on multiplying: crime, antisocial behaviour, homelessness. Well, we can be better than that. And being better than that means giving them much more support than we've managed so far. And one final thing that we've done, well, two things actually, just to mention them, and these are products of health devolution. We have funded a pilot called Mentally Healthy Schools, where we are putting independent counselling services in our primary and secondary schools to provide that support that I think the education system has not been able to provide in recent times. because we recognise that's a huge issue. And recently, just before Christmas, we became the first city region in England to publish waiting time data for children's mental health services. Because we think a spotlight it's not good, and people need to know it's not good, because until you're honest about it, then you get some change. So, yeah, we're prioritising all of this, and that was what I said I would do. It's what I am doing, and I'm determined to deliver this support for our young people.
There's a comment here that's related from Joshua Lee on Twitter. He says, I'm part of the leaving care system in Manchester. Those who are in Tameside get free travel. Why can't those who are in Manchester get the same? I don't know how old Joshua is, so I don't know whether he's affected by the opportunity pass or not.
Well, he's really...
Oh,
there, okay.
Sorry, okay.
I'm 20 years old, but
Okay.
the leaving care system in Greater Manchester at the moment has just been upped to 25 years old for continued service of what used to be Bernardo's leaving care service, but has just gone into Manchester. When I grew up in foster care, I did know of a young lad who I lived with who was part of Tameside, and I understand that Tameside do things a bit different. But I know that Greater Manchester Council at the moment have an activity pass for those in Greater Manchester leaving care for gym and swim, and now I'm part of what they call a change group. And our argument at the moment is, why can't we have a bus pass like Tameside's leaving care, rather than the travel instead of the activity pass?
I mean, it's a really good question. I don't know if Brenda wants to come in on this question, because obviously Tameside are doing a good job on this, and it's great. I mean, we want to move towards a clearer guarantee for care leavers. That's more of a Greater Manchester guarantee, where we can. I don't want to dictate to our councils, but I think if they were to sort of say we'll all agree a minimum, I think that would help care leavers, wouldn't it? Because then everyone would know where they stand, wherever they live in Greater Manchester. So I'm interested to see if we can set that out, in terms of access to a home, a job, all of the things that people fall back on parents for. I think it's our job to set out in a guarantee what care leavers should have. So we had a round table recently where care leavers were there, and one of them was saying that they thought access to a mentor 24/7, was a really important thing. So like anyone would ring their mum or their dad if they were in a real bad situation, that somebody would always be there for them and to help in that way. Or someone else said free prescriptions, actually, because there's a lot of people who've been in care that may have ongoing issues with their mental health. So they were saying, well, I honestly can't afford to pay for my prescriptions. And I think Oldham Council have kind of, in principle, supported that move. To be fair to them, all 10 of our councils, I think, have given a council tax holiday to people leaving care up until 21, I think I'm right in saying. So there are some things being done, but we're trying to set it all out in a guarantee. And Brenda, if you wanted to, Brenda leads on equalities for us in Greater Manchester. We really are conscious that we need to do more to level the playing field for people, and if we could do that in a Greater Manchester guarantee for care leavers, I think that'd be a really great thing.
Yes, Andy, the areas that you said are definitely going on in different areas of Greater Manchester. Different things are happening, and I think as part of my equalities brief, I want to bring all these things together. In Tameside, actually, our care leavers are exempt from council tax to the age of 25.
Good.
So we've expanded even on that one. Yeah. I think we do have to look at what the different districts across Greater Manchester are doing, and look at how we can bring it all together. Because I think there's good things all over the place, but they're not all joined up. If I can just add, though, one of the things that I think in Greater Manchester we are starting to do very well is to actually listen to the voice of young people. And I know that there is a combined authority youth council, and I know that I'm very proud of Tameside Youth Council, because they're very active and very involved in that. I meet with them very regularly.
You and I met them. They gave us a tough time.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. And they will give you a rough time if they get the chance as well.
I know.
But I think listening to the voice of young people is so important. It may be a cliche, but they are the future, and it's their future that we have to, try to help shape. And we can only do it if we know what they are looking for. So, yeah, let's bring it all together and let's listen to those people.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Brendan. Couldn't agree more.
Comments? Do you want to come back, Joshua?
Yeah, I've got another question as well.
Is there anyone else with questions about young people? I just want to make sure everyone gets a chance. Nick?
So basically about the young people's investment, you were saying a bit earlier on at the start about free bus travel for those who are 16 to 18. Would that then affect their bursary when they go into college? Because a lot of young people now who either their parents don't earn over a certain amount, or those who are leaving care are guaranteed a bursary, and sometimes travel is also taken out.
So we're talking to all the colleges about that at the moment, because I want to do everything I can to minimise the call on public funds to help fund this bus pass. And the truth is, colleges like this one we're in tonight, the FE colleges, they already spend quite a lot of money on bus passes for young people. It's just that they don't get much, well, they buy them individually for people. And I'm saying, well, we could do more with that money if we were to pool it. So the answer would be, people would still get their non-travel bits, if you like, but possibly not get the travel, because the travel bit will be covered in the free bus pass. And just to make sure everyone sees this, we want it to be an opportunity pass more than a bus pass. So we want to sign up sporting organisations, theatres, music venues, even commercial venues that might want to join up as well, to give people either free or reduced entry. So it's a passport for young people to the whole of Greater Manchester. That's what we're trying to build here. That you can't just cover your travel, you can actually then get into these places, so that we kind of send a message to the young people. This is for you, this place, this is yours, You explore it, you shape it, you build it. And I think that's what we're trying to build through this. And just to add to what Brenda was saying, we have set up a youth combined authority. We've given them the job of developing this policy, because the days of politicians like patting young people on the head and saying, inviting them in, but then sort of not listening to anything that they've said, that does more harm than good, to be honest. So, Hannah, we're really keen in kind of bringing young people in, but then giving them something real to build that will change their lives. And that's how devolution, I think, can start to mean something to people and make politics a bit more real to people. And I'm determined that this is what we've got to do with devolution in Greater Manchester. This is why I do these events. Everyone's got to shape it together. Everyone should be able to be part of the conversation and make some change happen, big or small, be it on care leavers or young people or whatever. And slowly it's taking shape. I hope you can see it taking shape. And I think it's quite exciting.
Yeah, it is. The lady over there.
Hello, Andy. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi. As a school governor in secondary in the Tameside area over the past 10 years, I've seen the absolute decimation from central government of the funding for education. Lack of funding for day-to-day running of schools that are caught up in PFI arrangements going decades long that they just can't afford. The stampede for the doors of good teachers who basically can't take any more of having to work under the conditions they are. Locally, what can you do about supporting schools who have to be saying to central government, we can't do this anymore?
I try to kind of refrain from overtly party political stuff in this role, because no one wants me to do all the point scoring. I don't think it's why I'm here. I'm trying to solve things rather than just do the usual point fingers, but I'm going to make an exception on this issue. I despair of government education policy, truly despair, for what it does to people working within it, as you say, who are just utterly demoralised, but also, of course, for the young people who then are being let down. I just think the whole thing, the combination of it all, everything, the academies, free schools, prioritising grammar schools again, the English baccalaureate, focusing on the university route, neglecting the other kids, Ofsted and the way they behave, the pressure through SATs and all of it. I was Shadow Education Secretary when Gove was setting off on this journey. And I was kind of out of fashion at the time, because I said in the House of Commons, I don't believe in any of this. I believe in comprehensive education, where all kids get the same chance. You don't sort of say that some are better than others. You know, I want an education policy, not for some kids in some schools, as he seemed to sort of promote, but for all kids in all schools. And we haven't got that, nowhere near it, in my view. And then you get a system that just doesn't deliver. You know, that figure I quoted about young people not having hope, it's because they can see schools not focusing on them as they're going through school, because they're not the ones who are going to get well, it used to be A to C's, it's now the 9s to 6s or whatever. And then they kind of feel that the system is disinvesting from them. It's just, honestly, I wish I could give you a better answer than saying I do despair, actually. I've called for a GM commissioner for schools. Why? Schools are inherently a local community thing, aren't they? It shouldn't be all dictated from Whitehall, where academies have contracts with Whitehall. The locality has a role here, surely, in raising children and getting and the churches have a role. I believe in the church's role in education. So it just makes me honestly despair. And I think if we had more devolved control or more influence over what our schools are doing, then I think we could make it better. And the policies I've tried to bring through on technical education are intended to correct some of the failures of national policy, i.e. the failure to say anything meaningful to young people who want a technical education other than letting them just find their own way in life. And I think if you were able to engage young people more, schools would probably do better here, because then you'd have more, all of the school engaged in what's happening, rather than some deciding age 14, well, I'm going nowhere in school, therefore why should I bother? And it's, yeah, sorry, but I mean, you touched on the wrong subject there. But truly, I think, you know, you're lucky in this borough to have a great member of Parliament. You have 3 great members of Parliament, actually. One, a great friend of mine, Andrew Gwynn, who I just think is inspirational, particularly in the way he's been talking about mental health this week, in so many ways, actually. Brilliant. But I also want to single out Angela Rayner. I think she's doing a brilliant job as Shadow Education Secretary. People should listen to what she's saying about a national education service. You know, and the party needs to, here's one from my own side it needs to reflect on. Don't just promise everything free for university students. That reinforces everything I'm talking about. What about the kids who are not going to university? What about them? But I think Angela is a voice for them because of her own background. So we need change from both political parties, but I think this proposal of a national education service is the thing that needs to be built up, and Angela deserves great credit for bringing it forward.
We've got time for one more comment on young people. The lady next to the lady who just spoke. Is it purple? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Oh. Sorry, it's really dark there.
Hi, Andy.
He's not blushing, I don't think.
Thank you. It is dark, in fairness.
It is. I'm going to backhand her up here.
In regards to all the issues that have been discussed so far, but especially young people and education, to what extent do you think devolved government and devolved funding and powers can make a difference, and to what extent does central government need to be more cooperative?
Well, that is another, you're going to get me off on one again, I'll be careful, I won't give you the long thing again.
60 seconds.
60 seconds, yeah. Well, here's my 60-second version. I am a passionate believer in devolution, because I was in Westminster for 16 years and I tried to speak up for the north of England and Greater Manchester there, and I just found in the end it's sometimes like banging your head against a brick wall, because it's inherently London-centric. That's what it is. We've got an over-centralised system down there that all lives within the M25, and therefore life revolves around that, and all the funding decisions are made with that in mind. And Paul battles away to try and, get more funding here, and so do I. But in the end, the system is rigged for some parts of the country and is unfair to others. And I've decided in the end to kind of leave that and come at it a different way. I just believe that we will have healthier politics if we're doing more at this level, where we can debate it like we're doing tonight and decide it more amongst ourselves, rather than having policies dumped on us that aren't built for us from London. And the education policy is a classic example of that. People down there who all went to university building a policy that was for them and the people they know, but not actually thinking about the kids of a borough like this. So I actually feel, to be honest, Westminster, very quickly, Hannah, I've got a very clear analysis about this. Westminster created Brexit. Why? Because it failed to look after all parts of the country equally. It looked after some places more than others. So by definition, Westminster can't be the answer to Brexit. Something different is needed here. Devolution is the way to give areas more voice, more control, build a healthier politics. It's got to be the way forward from where the country is at this particularly bad moment in time.
Which brings us very neatly on to our final question. Is Carl Kelsol's friend here? I was told that Carl Kelsol might have a friend turning up. No? Okay. Carl Kelsol wanted to know what are the risks of a no Brexit deal for Greater Manchester. In kind of 60 seconds again, solve education and Brexit in 2 minutes.
They're massive. I mean, I could go on about the minus 10% in our GDP, which is the government's own figure. I could say a lot about that in terms of the impact on people's jobs, but Ian's just left, but I'll tell you something that Ian Hopkins said to me. He still doesn't know whether he could cooperate with other police forces around Europe. So at the moment, you know, if there's a kind of flight coming into Manchester and they're worried about somebody on it, you know, they can exchange information quickly and that protects the public. They still don't know what it would mean if we crash out without a deal, and that's the kind of situation that we're in. We do more trade with Europe than the rest of England. 60% of Greater Manchester's exports go to the European Union. So you just got to ask yourself, if you crash out without a deal, where there's no arrangement for customs for that trade, what's it going to do to those businesses? What's it going to do to the people who work in those businesses? It cannot be good news. I am advocating still trying to find a deal. Honour the referendum. You know, honour the referendum. I know people who want a second referendum might not like that. I actually feel we should try and get a deal with a customs arrangement within it to make things work and get on and embrace the future. But if we can't get that, and Theresa May's deal doesn't do that, then I'm afraid I would prefer a second referendum to crashing out with no deal. So we're in a really bad place, and I think it's that dysfunctional parliamentary debate that's taken us to this bad place. Why have they let this kind of petty bickering sort of get in the way of doing what's right by the country? It's a really sad spectacle to witness, and it's actually becoming quite a dangerous spectacle now.
And probably one that there'll be more time to talk about at the next Ask Andy, if it's not resolved by then. Thank you everyone for coming. We are out of time now, otherwise I would take more Brexit questions. Thank you for all the questions you've sent, all the comments we've had, and hopefully everyone will be able to come again.
Can I just say, say very quickly on behalf of everyone, a massive thank you to you, Hannah, for chairing it so well. And just in closing, a huge thanks to you all on a really cold night for coming out part in the discussion. It's brilliant, actually. I always enjoy these nights because it's about the issues, isn't it, rather than people the issues. And there may be differences of opinion on certain things, and we can work those through. But I think this is a different way of doing politics and a better way of doing politics, and you're a part of it by being here tonight. And I just want to say a massive thank you for turning out. Thank you very much.